Hello and welcome to the Miko Bits Show, and I'm your host, Miko Bits. And today we have an exciting show for you. It is YGG with Gabby, and this is the Yield Guild, which is a play to earn group. And this is a very interesting company and project in DeFi, and it's all about NFTs. So excited to introduce you to Gabby. Okay, so here's Gabby. So, Gabby, how are ya?
Hey Miko, doing good.
Okay, terrific. So, I'm very excited to hear a little bit about what you're doing now with YGG. So, tell me a little bit about YGG.
Okay, so YGG stands for Yield Guild Games. So it's a combination of my experiences in NFTs and DeFi. So I've been pretty early to the DeFi space. Been here for almost 3 years, and in the last maybe 6 to 8 months, I think I felt that the best possible space to just explore new things in crypto was in the intersection of NFTs and DeFi. So I started played around with yield farming, doing going for Yearn finance, for example, playing around with Compound and Aave. And what happened was that I started combining these with my previous experiences in NFTs and blockchain games, and I was seeing just a lot of new different possibilities that were not possible before. Just for example, some of the things I did, I sharded an NFT for that I bought for 27 and a half ether, and the valuation of that NFT actually went up over 10x. So yeah, so NFT and DeFi for me is really the most interesting space in crypto right now, and that's what led to Yield Guild.
Let's go on a short side trip, which is I would love to have your thoughts about yEarn and the yEarn ecosystem.
Okay.
I know it's a little side trip, but like let's go there.
Okay, so Wyron, I was there during the last week of farming. It was very notable because Andre, the founder, he didn't have any of the tokens for himself, and he had basically built a system wherein other people could optimize earning money on their own crypto. So for me, this was the like very ethos of Ethereum and crypto where you're there to make people's lives better using blockchain, using smart contracts. So I was really attracted to it, and I felt like this is probably one of the most monumental projects for the whole crypto space this year.
I love it. And it's really kind of pure and full decentralization.
Yeah.
So it is an incredible, incredible project. You also mentioned compound finance. So I'd
Uh-huh.
love to kind of get your picture because I know that compound, is a slightly different model. So I'd love to get your thoughts about it.
Yeah. So Compound, I would say that they really kicked off the entire yield farming craze in the space. I mean, Compound's been around for maybe a couple of years now, and one of my favorite things about Compound was that you could actually deposit your stable coin. So, for example, your DAI, and then get the CDAI back in your wallet, which is yeah, basically your stable coin that's already compounding. So that's a real innovation, and then they proceeded to do the comp farming earlier this year, which pretty much yeah kicked off the entire DeFi summer, and that's kind of why where we are now.
Are you following the compound blockchain announcement?
I
The new.
I saw the announcement. Still not sure what to make of it, but I do think that interchain operability is going to be a bigger thing in the next couple of years. I don't think that the kind of the value will be stored only in Ethereum. So it's something that's interesting for sure, but it's kind of hard to see where this is all going.
Speaking of cross chain, and again, this is another detour. What do you think about like the Polkadot substrate ecosystem?
Okay, so I'm actually really interested in what will happen with NFTs in the Polkadot ecosystem. So I've only started recently digging around to see what will happen there. Started advising a project that is doing NFT marketplace there. So yeah, so I do think that yeah, this is something that will be kind of just a lot more have a lot more projects and traction in the next couple of years.
Great. Thanks for indulging me on the detours. Let's come back to YGG.
Sure.
So, tell me, how did this get started? I
Okay.
mean, I know it's an exciting story, so I'd love to hear the origins.
Okay, so a lot of it is actually because of I'm one of the, I would say, OG players of Axie Infinity. So I've been playing the game for over 2 years, and the remarkable thing about Axie was that they're very early in putting DeFi applications inside the game economy in the virtual world. So they don't really just think of it as a game; they really think of the game in terms of an economy. So at the very basic level, Axie Infinity is it's a digital pet game, so it's a little bit similar to CryptoKitties that you have NFTs and then you breed them. There is a battle system wherein you basically battle other people with your pets versus their pets. What's really interesting was that earlier this year they introduced a basically a tokenized resource called SLP or Small Love Potion. So SLP was minted whenever you win a game against another person, and you have to burn it or spend it basically when you have to breed two axes to create a new one. So what happened with the economy is that it actually created a spot price for how much it cost to breed an axie, and this actually wasn't worth much in the early maybe first few months of while it was happening, but as axie grew in popularity. SLP started becoming worth basically real money, and what happened was that in the middle of the pandemic, a lot of people realized that you could basically you could farm SLP by grinding Axie Infinity, winning matches, getting the SLP, selling it for ETH on Uniswap, and cashing it out for fiat. And what happened in the Philippines during the pandemic was that the unemployment here was really bad, so something like maybe 30 to 50%. And word started getting around that you could play this game and basically earn like 3 to 5 times minimum wage. So that was really incredible. And as I say, nothing's more viral than to see your friend earning money. So without any outward marketing, it really grew here in the Philippines. And I was onboarding a lot of people here in the country, selling them Axies, loaning them Axies if they couldn't afford it, giving as low as like 10% down payment so that people could basically play to earn during the pandemic.
Yeah, the play to earn model is quite incredible. It's quite distinct, and it's really, I think, very beautiful. I think that in the history of gaming, we have seen these things like IGN. We've seen other things that I think have taken advantage of attention arbitrage. But I think the thing that's beautiful about play to earn and blockchain is the amount of power and the amount of economic gains that are given directly to the participants. So I'd love to kind of hear your thoughts about how much power the participants get.
Yeah, it's really amazing, especially coming from almost 20 years in the game industry, wherein, in free to play, the player doesn't really get anything for their just for their time and their effort in the game. Once you stop playing, basically lose all of the assets that you have in the game. So what's amazing about play to earn is that you are basically compensated directly for what you are putting into the game. You're adding liquidity to the player base. You're adding your attention, and you're being paid for it with a tokenized resource. And this wasn't really possible in a scalable way before blockchain. And yeah, I think this is really a revolution. There's maybe only a few tens of thousands of people who know it right now, but I expect that number to jump up very drastically as people realize how much of a paradigm shift this is from the current free to play.
So, United States presidential candidate Andrew Yang talks about UBI or Universal Basic Income, right? So, one of the amazing things that's emerged out of play to earn is this idea that people's time can be valued in game currencies
Yeah.
that are exchangeable for liquid currencies, right? So that's a fascinating development. Can you talk a little bit about UBI in this context?
Yeah, so funny you mentioned UBI. Yeah, it is actually a form of UBI. When you are basically playing a game and earning money from it. And the other thing that happened within Axie Infinity was that because everyone was using Uniswap to exchange their SLP for Ether, what happened was that maybe 90% of the player base actually got the Uniswap airdrop earlier this year.
Wow.
So yeah, so that was something like $1,200 when it dropped, which was the UBI amount, right? So it
Yes.
felt like people who were DeFi users who knew how to use Uniswap were actually recipients of UBI just for being smarter than the average person. So that was really amazing. And what's 1,200 then was really a much larger amount for people here in the Philippines, especially for those who held the amount. So yeah, people got something like maybe 3 to 6 months worth of a typical salary from getting the uni airdrop.
Oh, it's fantastic. So, in past conversations, you and I have talked a little bit about the idea of like a Uber or a Grab taxi, right? Of driving these cars, right? But in a sense, like in your model, they're driving Axies.
Yeah,
So, like, I'd love to hear you describe that or talk about that.
yeah. So the way to think about play to earn is that people aren't showing up and saying maybe I'll play a game or maybe I won't. Because a lot of these people are, playing this game basically for income. The model is closer to I'm showing up and I'm gonna play this game. I'm gonna be efficient and I'm going to win because I want to earn more money. So in a sense, it's similar to driving for Uber and Grab and saying, I want to make X trips in a day and get this much money. So that's why, engagement retention levels are very high because people just see it differently than I'm just playing a game for entertainment.
One of the things that's so interesting is that we are coming to an end game around this idea of attention economics, right? And the thing that I think is so interesting is when you look at free to play gaming, one of the funny externalities are like really bad players, right? Like what I mean by bad, and I'm not talking about players that are not skillful, right? Because people who are not skillful, as long as they are earnest, can beautifully add value to a game through matching,
They still have
right?
place
So
in
a
the
low
system.
skill,
Yeah.
yeah, you have like low elo, and then the
Yeah.
player can play
Yeah.
and that with others, and but they're still adding beautiful value, right? What I mean by a bad player are people who deliberately do wrong things, right? But what's beautiful about a game that has this economic construct is that things like griefing don't make sense, right? Because why would you deliberately lose a game where where there's money
Yeah.
at stake, right? Like, so people are incentivized to behave, I think, better, and I think that anyone who's playing is going to play to win, because winning is better than losing, right? Like, obviously the economic rewards are better. So I think it's a really fascinating development. I'd love to kind of hear you talk a little bit about kind of the evolution of the game industry, and give maybe some examples about other games that you played and that you kind of contrast this to.
Okay, so for a game like Axie Infinity, I think it has a lot of its roots in, for example, games like Pokemon, where you can
Yeah.
collect a lot of digital pets. Like no one has just one Axie; the very minimum is three, and some people like me have hundreds. So yeah, very very much inspired by digital pet games. Um, Axie Infinity is also inspired by TCG, so card games like maybe Magic the Gathering or Hearthstone, because
Yeah.
each Axie part has a move, and you play it kind of like a card game. So that's why the battle system is deep. It's managed to be one of the very few games in the blockchain space that you could call easy to learn but difficult to master, which means that yeah, you can actually build an ecosystem. You can build esports, you can build tournaments, you can build a play to earn system around it, because it does require skill and understanding and is not so easily gamed.
That's exciting. So just to echo back to you what I'm hearing about your project, YGG, right, which is that your project focuses effectively on renting Axies and renting them out to players who may be kind of like new players, right? But that their goal of playing is actually just purely economic, right? So that obviously they're going to hopefully enjoy themselves, right? I mean, I love it if people are enjoying their jobs, but at the end of the day, they're trying to put food on the table, right? So tell me a little bit about like your typical player and tell me how you recruit and tell me how you like, how does your business work? How do these people
Sure.
get involved with you?
So for YGG, we want to bring millions of people to the blockchain using play to earn games such as, but not limited to, Axie Infinity. So a lot of these people find us through basically the work of community managers in our system, people who are knowledgeable in games such as Axie or Formula One Delta Time or maybe Sandbox. So these are the ones that recruit these players, or as we call them, the scholars. And YGG basically has a bank of NFTs that people can use to play these games. And then we lend them out, we lease them to these players who, and most of the users that we have, they want to participate in the play to earn revolution, but they actually can't afford the NFTs. I mean, because you can make money using these NFTs, then the NFTs also have an upfront cost. They can't be free, right? Um, so yeah, so they can't afford it. So we basically buy some of these NFTs. We in the case of Axies, we breed them to mass replicate to create new ones, and then we create accounts and we lease them to these people who are basically driving them in the same way they would drive for an Uber or a Grab, and they go earn money with it. And then we split the revenue between 70% to the scholar or the player, 20% to their community manager, and 10% to YGG.
Wow, that's really cool. And I think if you look at it as like a car service, right? Like maybe it's closer to like a limousine, right? Because, in a sense, the companies are the ones like, if you're doing like a Uber, like no normal person owns a limousine. Like, they don't own that,
That's
right?
right.
The company owns the limousine,
Yeah.
right? And the driver gets paid. So I think maybe it's a little bit like that. But one of the things that's fascinating is I'd love to kind of also understand that when you have NFTs, there are actually kind of like financial, almost market making firms, right? There are these companies that buy like Axies just for purely financial
Yeah.
reasons. And then they end up in a funny situation where they don't have players, right? Because like, I'm a managing director of a
Yeah.
fund that I just bought like $1 million of
Yeah.
Axies, but I don't have the time to play them all.
Yeah.
So how do you see that playing out?
Yeah, so a lot of these assets are definitely gaining in value. So there are Axies that are worth over $100,000 already, and a lot of the
Wow.
people who are buying them are people who basically see them as long-term investments. That said, it doesn't help the project. So even if you buy, for example, $1 million of land in Decentraland or maybe $500,000 worth of Axies, it doesn't help the projects if these assets go unused. So yeah, so we try to look for ways wherein these valuable assets are actually used within the virtual world or metaverse ecosystem that they're meant to be in. So for example, if you buy a lot of land and you don't develop on it, the land value will probably appreciate more slowly than if you put a building on top of it, you put in events. So that's what another things that YGG is doing is that people who own a lot of NFTs, they can basically lend them out to us, and we can develop on top of it. We can farm it, we can raise it, whatever that NFT does, and then we can split basically the resources farmed with the person who owns that NFT.
Yeah, I was talking on my show with Jake Bruckman from Coin Fund, and we were talking about art. So
Uh-huh.
he's actually an art gallery owner, which is an NFT art gallery, but I think the thing that becomes really exciting is that there's also kind of, I would say, crafting, right? And what I mean by that is if you look at something like the Sandbox,
Yep.
right? So I just had a nice show with Seb from the Sandbox, and he said that basically, it may be that people will come to your island, right? The land that you purchased, and then they will build things for you, right? So, in a sense, like you can create buildings, you can create a museum for the artwork, or you can create things that are themselves not necessarily fine art,
Yeah.
but they are things that require patience and attention and skill, and that you can add value. So I think, there may be a role for YGG players inside of an environment like Sandbox to be like skilled craftsmen and craft women to build buildings or build artifacts or game elements or anything.
Yeah, one of the way we think of YGG is that we are bringing people with very diverse skills to help build out the metaverse economy. So this doesn't mean everyone is like battling with their axes or trying to kill
Mm.
other monsters or other people. We're actually very interested in all sorts of people who want to build up an economy, right? So if you build up an economy in any city or country, you have the people who may build the buildings, you may have people who provide the food, do the transport, you may have the architect. We see it very much in the same way in the metaverse, where I feel that we are maybe 0.1% of the way in building out the metaverse economy with some of these massive projects like maybe a Decentraland, a Sandbox, an Axie Infinity. And we're bringing the people who are doing the jobs inside that metaverse. So there may be people who are battling, there may be people who are creating content for other people, there are maybe people who are crafting the lower level items to higher level items and then giving out to someone else. There are people who are creating the guides, the YouTube videos, the podcast to tell other people how to get engaged in the metaverse economy. So we see ourselves as a guild that accelerates that process by making it easy to onboard people and basically find the job that they want to do in the metaverse.
This is so beautiful. Like one of the things that fascinates me, right, is we've all been watching Elon Musk, and Elon has this wonderful thing. He recently tweeted that the SpaceX Mars colony will be not subject to any terrestrial government for its laws, right? Which is just a shocking thing for him to say, right? Like he's basically like, we're gonna set up rules where people could do whatever, whatever,
It's
right?
straight
Whatever
out of a
SpaceX
sci-fi book.
says, right? It's totally like sci-fi. But what it makes me think is it makes me think of this, right? Which is, if you remember Blade Runner, there's a blimp, right? And off the blimp is saying, a new life awaits you in the
Mhm.
off-world colonies, right? So it's basically like an advertisement for citizens to basically colonize
Yeah.
this other planet, right? But so what you can imagine is that this is motivated by a financial desire to bring colonists, right? So the thing that I think is so interesting about what you're describing is you're really describing this new metaverse colonies, right? And you're talking about being essentially a supplier of colonists, right? Of
Yeah.
skilled workers,
Yeah.
right? And you're just saying like, I'm going to help. I'm going to help populate your land, right? So that your land becomes incredibly valuable and incredibly like rich and exciting and fun. So that's an amazing vision that you're building. I guess what I'd love to understand from you is how what's next for YGG? Like it sounds like you've got an Axie guild, and it sounds like you're looking at things like a sandbox, and you're looking at like F1. So like what how do you see YGG expanding?
So what we're really building out now is basically a guild leveling system. So think of progression in the guild as its own RPG, wherein you come into the Discord, you start as level 0, you obtain your membership badge, and then you start doing things that basically accrue value in the metaverse. So again, it might be playing these different games, it might be organizing communities, it might be crafting. So we're building that leveling system now because for people who are farming, they may start kind of at the bottom with no resources, but we want them to actually earn enough money so that they don't need to do subsistence farming anymore, and we
Yeah.
we want to turn them into investors in this metaverse economy. So often after maybe grinding Axie for 2 or 3 months, these people start buying the governance token or they start buying some land. So they're actually turning from kind of farmers to investors. And this is really what we're about. Of course, we want to bring YGG to millions of people around the world. We're starting with the Philippines and Indonesia because we're pretty close to the communities there. And even in these two countries alone, I think the ceiling for users that we have is probably in the tens of millions at the very least. But places like India, China, much of Latin America, South Africa, there's so many places in the world where I think people can opt out of their current real world economies, which are, by the way, being devastated by just the current state of affairs in the world, and move into the metaverse economy where it's basically a new frontier. And yeah, where basically early adopters are getting rewarded in a way that probably haven't seen since the early colonization, maybe 400 or 500 years ago.
This is absolutely wonderful as a vision, right? Because when you're talking about subsistence farming, going back to this whole Mars and space metaphor, I don't know if you watched Mark Watney in The Martian, but like,
I haven't.
that in that, oh, it's a wonderful movie. It's got Matt Damon, and he ends up being a potato farmer, right, on Mars, right? Because and the thing that's so funny is the character is actually a botanist, right? And if he doesn't farm potatoes, like he's gonna die. He doesn't. He's stuck on Mars, And but the thing that's so great about the vision you're describing is like that is the beginning, right? It's just scratching the dirt, right? It's just really, really this very low, like if you don't do this, you're gonna die, right? But then like the thing that you're depicting, I think, is so much of the expansion of the opportunity for the players, And I think that the thing that excites me about what you're describing is you're describing something that's not zero sum, right? And I think that that's a beautiful thing. You're describing basically millions of players coming into blockchain.
Yeah.
Right. And that to me is exciting because the thing that's so amazing is if you brought a million players in blockchain, you would double blockchain. Like you would double or triple blockchain.
That's right. That's right.
And tell me like what kind of like background do the people have? Like tell me a little bit about your player. Like, how much do they know? What have they been exposed to? Like what are the kinds of things that make them a good candidate to join YGG
So
as a guild player?
the most amazing thing I've discovered from a lot of the people joining our guild was that most of them have almost like zero to very little blockchain experience. Of course, almost all of them are gamers because you need to have kind of game playing, problem solving skills to kind of be attracted to a gaming guild in the first place. But given that, people are like, like my mama said, I've been wasting my time playing games all my life. Now I can actually play games, join this guild, and earn maybe more money than my parents are earning. Like they may,
Wow.
like a lot of the Filipinos here, their parents are off working abroad, providing money to their family. So yeah, so they're
Mhm.
using their gaming skills and then learning blockchain along the way. And yeah, so and they're kind of amazed at just how much these game playing and problem solving skills are valued in the play to earn system.
Well, the thing that's been amazing to me is actually watching how much the Philippines has been part of the intrinsic evolution of the blockchain. I think there's been some amazing things. Obviously, you mentioned this kind of like tendency for some people in the Philippines to work outside of the country. And so one of the things that's a very big blockchain application is like the remittance, right? The international remittance and payment system. So that's
For
been a
sure.
big thing. Obviously, big projects like
Yeah.
coins.ph, which I think your co-founder is Beryl has worked on, and I think that the other application that's been so interesting to watch too is that obviously there's a tremendous kind of English language competency within Philippines, and I think one of the places that has taken off is doing things like support businesses
That's right.
for things like Bitcoin exchanges and things of that nature. So it's been a really interesting thing to watch, and obviously you're expanding into the region, into Indonesia, so it to me, like, it's very, very exciting. The thing that I wanted to kind of zoom in on a little bit is thinking more about the incentives of your metaverse metagame,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is that, you were talking about building incentives for your players to rise up inside of the YGG
Yep.
hierarchy.
Yep.
So tell me a little bit more about like what that looks like.
Okay, so for example, take a virtual world like maybe Sandbox, right? So people
Yep.
may start farming by maybe doing things that kind of earn the minimum amount of money, and then as they kind of save money, they may have some left over after spending it for essentials. Then people have the opportunity to basically invest in NFTs in the ecosystem that give them kind of permanent assets. This is the real world version of I save up my salary for 3 years and I buy a house. I think we really compress that time frame in the blockchain ecosystem by maybe you buy a land that starts costing out 50 to $100, but it gives out dividends in either DAI or or Sand or any other token. So there's really this opportunity to turn people into kind of an investment mindset by investing in hard assets, which are the NFTs, that may produce some sort of yield on top of the capital appreciation of those NFTs themselves. And being able to do this kind of on a micro scale within a game system wherein the economy is 24/7, yeah, it basically turns your economic life into an entire video game. And the people who have been playing games all their lives, I think they know how to win in this system, right?
I like this. I would love to hear any anecdotal stories of any, you don't have to name any names, but like of any of the players and kind of, I know you talked about the Uniswap airdrop, which is like a huge UBI, but like other experiences or reactions, either their families or like, the things that they've, because it's got to be an incredible experience. It has to be like colonizing Mars for some of these people, right? So
Yeah.
tell me about
So
that.
there's a Facebook group for Axie Infinity players in the Philippines, and one of the popular things that happened was that people are posting photos of the money that they earned or the stuff they bought
Oh my
from
God.
basically SLP farming. So it's called Salamat Axie or Thank You Axie. And then people started out by
Oh wow.
basically posting, 200, 300, $400 worth of cash on the table. And then people started posting like the mobile phones that they bought so that their family players can play Axie as well. Someone posted basically the milk that they were able to buy for their children, and someone posted a date that he was able to have that was basically paid for by Axie Infinity. So it's really
Oh,
amazing
I
to see this
love
because you
that.
see the actual things that people are buying, how their lives are being improved by this, and yeah, it is really just amazing to see.
And that's beautiful to me, like Selamat Axie. I love to see the link. I love to look at that for myself
Of course.
because to me, I love the things you're describing. I love the things you're describing. You're describing kind of food on the table. You're describing milk. You're describing a date. Like you're describing,
Very real
new,
things, right?
new, oh, so like deep, right? Like these are real important things that connect people, that help them to survive, that give them more tools to kind of advance their cause. So it's beautiful. It's so interesting, right? Because I think the idea that you described earlier is so funny, right? Which is that I do think it's flipping the script because when you do look at these games, um the way that our parents long have kind of talked about the gaming and world, has legitimately been true, right? Like this
Yeah, yeah.
feeling of like, why are you
Why are
wasting
you
your
wasting your
time
time? Yeah,
there?
yeah,
And the
yeah.
reality is that the companies that publish the games,
Yeah,
they are literally sucking out all the value, right? They're
yeah.
getting everything. You do literally get nothing. Like
It
like
is a
you
zero
just
sum
spent
game.
like,
Yeah.
yeah, you spent 80 hours in the game, and then and the game company got like 50 bucks,
Yeah.
and and you got, that's
And
it,
they're
it's
like, thank
over,
you. Here's
right?
the next one.
Yeah, like you might have gotten some time spent. I mean, it's entertainment, right? Like
Yeah.
you got some time where it wasn't like, maybe your life felt a little bit more peaceful or a little less painful, but like it's a high price, right? I mean, so I really enjoy what you're describing. So are the is there still enjoyment in playing in this way though? Like are the players getting, are they reporting enjoyment, or is it just really work again?
Well,
Does it come back to like doing the job, grinding, and this
so
feeling?
I must say that to actually progress in a play to earn game like Axie Infinity, I think you have to really like playing games as well because the game systems are deep. And basically, if you don't know how to play in games, you're not going to win games and you're not going to go anywhere. So I would
Yeah,
say
that's
there is
bitter.
still a fair bit of enjoyment as well, especially with deep games where you can basically put yourself on the path to mastery and not just earning, learning how the game works, learning how to be a little bit better than the other person. And this is why YGG also has an esports elite component. So basically, the top players of our guild are in an esports team where they will be competing with other top players in Axie Infinity. So they'll be competing in different tournaments and win prizes. The esports ecosystem in Play to Earn is still basically in its infancy, but I think
Sure.
it will mirror the esports scene now, which is already massive with millions of dollars of money coming in. And yeah, it's just starting here. It's very early, but it's good for these players to see kind of the aspirational version of what they're doing, farming for SLP, where you can basically become a top athlete in your class, right?
So tell me about the process for your guild members with respect to kind of digital asset custody,
Hmm.
right? Because like when are these people kind of like, buying a ledger, or are they at all, right? So I'm wondering how much of this is custodied by the guild, and how
Right.
much, how does it work?
Well, at the start, when you're at the farmer level and YGG is lending you NFT, so you basically don't own your Axie. We're creating accounts that these players can log into and play the game. They don't have control of the private keys. This is really important for our model to scale, because we don't want a situation where people run away with the assets that are farmed, or with the NFTs that we own, and that's very important for us to be able to scale to millions of users. Now, once they start earning, and the money they earn is basically split automatically via smart contract to their personal wallet. And as they earn more money personally, then they can start buying their own NFTs and then participating in guild activities with their personal wallet. So that's when they start kind of earning for themselves and accruing value via maybe digital land, or governance tokens. So yeah.
But I really like what you're describing, right? Because the thing that's so interesting is you're building almost game-like incentives into your metaverse metagame,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
In the sense that, like, for example, like I gave the example of this idea of like a limousine company,
Yeah.
right? So like, okay, you own all of the vehicles, right? So the drivers are like, okay, I'm doing my job, blah, blah, blah. But they might actually feel like, I earn so much driving the limo that I can actually buy my own car, and now I own the
Yeah.
asset,
Yeah.
right? So now they're driving their own car. But the thing that happens over time is maybe they start becoming a recruiter, or
Yeah.
maybe they start leveling up, and
Yeah.
pretty soon they're like, maybe they're owning land, or maybe, not virtual land, so they may become kind of like a mogul or a
Yeah.
baron, or so, some kind of powerhouse. So,
Mhm.
it's really exciting. So with respect to kind of like, how big is YGG at the moment?
So it's funny because we only have 5 people full time in YGG itself. And if you look at
Yeah.
the other people who are contributing, we're probably somewhere between 10 to 15 people. If you look at the Discord, there's almost 1,000 people. So YGG
Yeah.
is really a lot more than just the core team itself. And this is what I love about crypto networks, which are very different from traditional startups. With traditional startups, you only have these 5 people basically working day and night for maybe 3, 5, 7 years to realize something of value. Here in a crypto network, from day one, we're basically plugged into a community that is moving together towards a common goal. And as we build that community, they really become an extension of the core team who have the original vision. And one of our plans for YGG is to be able to turn it into a full DAO, and just having this community buy into the vision from the beginning, start taking tasks for themselves, and really believing that we're here to make the world basically a better place for everyone involved in this DAO. It's such a wonderful thing to experience for myself.
That is truly amazing. So, really, really enjoyed this rollicking conversation. So, tell me, any final kind of thoughts for the audience? You're definitely right on the bleeding edge of this new emerging frontier.
Yeah, so as I tell people, let's work together to build the metaverse economy. So we don't want to see any of these NFTs or blockchain games in a silo. I really think that like composability or interoperability, which we've seen to very powerful effects in DeFi this year, with, for example, with Wire and Finance, with Curve, and then them merging with other projects like Cover and Sushi. Composability is super important, in my opinion, especially on the economic scale. And you can think of Yield Guild as kind of the bridge that ties these different economies together through the most important part, which I think are the players.
So, can you also contemplate maybe developing like a sub guild or some kind of like engagement audience that actually goes directly into pure DeFi, right? Because my idea is that if you have all the players, right, like, you know, obviously the introductory level is you don't know anything. You don't know Ethereum, like, you know, you maybe you play Pokemon, right? So you're good at Pokemon, like you love these games. Come on into Axie, right? But after a little while, you might be able to take a player like that and introduce them to Compound for yield farming, or you may be able to introduce them to, you know, any of these other DeFi projects. So it'd be really fascinating in the future to see kind of a sub guild focused just on pure DeFi, because I think YGG could become like the kind of you know, just the engagement engine, right? Just become like a, you know, oh, do you want like 1,000 users? Do you want 10,000 users? You know, like, what, you know, come on, we're just gonna descend on your project, like, you know, and just make it like a powerhouse overnight.
Yeah, absolutely. I think maybe games is maybe the kind of gateway to the Web3 economy, because especially if you're talking to gamers, they understand what games are about. But I could see YGG becoming, for example, the largest credit union in the entire world, wherein you can get an unsecured loan of maybe $500 if you're level 0, $1,000 if you're level 1, maybe $10,000 if you're level 10, and we can have subgroups of these users try out different DeFi projects. And yeah, I think just having each of these users being having a Web3 wallet is such a powerful thing for composability.
I'm excited about that. I do feel like in the long run, you know, that may end up being a division of your company that has its own power, right? That, you know, and obviously, you know, if you bring 1 million gamers into IGG and into, you know, blockchain, right, you could easily bring like 10,000 or even more, you know, which is already like almost like the whole population of DeFi. So, you know, like I think the population of blockchain is, you know, you could double, and the population of DeFi you could double.
Yeah,
So, like, you know, it's
what excites me about that is that, you know, DeFi for at least for this year has been mostly for the whales. It's been harder to kind of earn money if you don't have a lot of capital to start with. So what we're doing with Yield Guild is really bringing the benefits of, you know, DeFi, yield farming, blockchain games to basically the people that need them the most. And I think it's going to have a lot more impact than 3,000 people getting richer.
Yeah, that I think is super meaningful. And I'm so glad to hear about this. It's one of those rare projects that you can do incredibly well by doing good. And, you know, I think it's everyone should know about this. Thanks so much for your time today.
Thanks so much for having me, Miko.
All right. It's a pleasure.